I guess. So, I just woke up from watching ExileCon until 5 in the morning, and my initial reactions were pretty negative. Sleeping over it, I also see some positives here. Quite a lot, actually. But, yeah, I just want to lay out why I'm a little bit scared about PoE 2. And what do you do if you can't afford a therapist? You post it to your YouTube channel. So for everybody out of the loop, GGG announced yesterday that Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2 are going to be separate games. And there has been mixed feelings about this, and I understand that coming from the outside, from Diablo, or I don't know, WoW or Lost Ark, it can be a little bit confusing as to why. Because on the surface, it seems like only upside, right? But let me give you a little bit of context and explain. 2019 was the first ExileCon. That's where they gave us the first trailer for Path of Exile 2. They announced it. It was super hype, and it was basically this second campaign for Path of Exile, and it's basically like this huge expansion, and it's gonna take Path of Exile 2 to the same level, but it's going to be the same game, and it's gonna not divide communities.
For years now, we've been wanting to make a sequel to Path of Exile. The problem with that, though, is that sequels split a community between two products.
Which I think is a pretty big thing, right? In Path of Exile, you already have softcore and hardcore divide, giving a lot of friction. Then you have Soul Self-Found, which, especially for the hardcore trade, took away a lot of people. And then you have Ruthless, which I guess only 5 people played. Another thing I'm a little bit iffy about is when Chris Wilson basically said they want to keep PoE 1 and PoE 2, and the way they're seeing it in the future is people are going to play PoE 2 for like 2 months, for example, and then PoE 1 for 1 month at the end. And I just don't know if he actually thinks that, because he does realize there's people playing other games than Path of Exile, and other than like the super hardcore base, that means they now have to decide, because they're not professional gamers, right? They have to work, they have other games they like. It's like, I don't know how he expects this to happen. And there we go back into division, right? Like less people to trade with, less people to talk with, more divide in the communities. Is there going to be a new subreddit? Either both games become smaller, or over time one swallows the other. I just don't see another outcome here. It's not as much just being negative, it's I'm a little bit shocked, right? I'm a little bit in like disbelief, because that was the status quo for 4 years, and now it's not there anymore. But fine. Why am I concerned about this? Well, there's this little meme in the PoE community, which if somebody asks, why do leagues have no beta? You answer, because we're the beta. Whenever a new league comes out, GGG is crunching until the very last minute. Back in the day, we had like 3 days from patch notes to the actual release. Now we have a week, which is a lot nicer, but they're like tweaking the numbers until release. They're still making the game until release, and it really shows. Most of the time, the leaks come out semi-unfinished. Not always, but a lot of the times there's like glaring issues, especially when it comes to like quality of life features that are just so obvious, right? Like, for example, how are you supposed to throw nets at enemies? Talking about bestiary here. Throw nets at enemies after you got them to like 10% in a game like this. Why would you have to pick up all the metamorph parts? Why does your arch nemesis inventory not have a search or a sort function? Why does heist exist? What the hell was even Crucible? Nobody knows. And now you're telling me that the Crunch boys are not only going to make PoE 1, but also PoE 2 at the same time, which is way bigger in scope. And while I think they can pull it off, it's definitely a normal reaction to just say, huh. I want to point something out here as well. There is a clip going kind of viral right now with Baylor Mage at ExileCon talking about Path of Exile had like 8 devs for the last 1.5 years, and they kind of held everything together, which he now corrected on Twitter that it was actually 20. He must have misheard or whatever. Maybe it was just a weird context. Either way, I don't think this changes much, because I would have been kind of insulted and impressed at the same time. So I don't really even know how I would have felt about that. 20 is still kind of impressive, right? Because that means 20 people made Sentinel, but at the same time, that also means I understand a lot more what happened with Arch Nemesis in 3.18, 3.19, how the hell that ever got into the game. It's just a lack of testing. More focus on PoE 2. That is what I back then theorized, and turns out that's probably pretty on point. And that is a problem, right? Like, you see how that diverted attention from them away. And sure, you could argue, well, when PoE 2 is finished, they just have to like maintain it, kinda. But still, there is going to be a tear between PoE 1 and PoE 2, because they are very different games. But now I kind of want to tie this into my critique of their presentation of Path of Exile 2. Now in the background, you see gameplay of Path of Exile 2, and it looks very slow, and I shouldn't say clunky, because I think the way they want to do PoE 2 is less cooldowns, less waiting, more active gameplay, which is fine, right? I think speed, you can slow it down, but that's really slow in like Path of Exile terms. And let's now collectively say it so that everybody can get it out of their system. Hell, this is only leveling. They probably have blue gear and not optimal gems. Thanks, man. Thank so much for your observation. The problem here is also presentation. So yeah, we know that. Path of Exile players probably know that. They understand like the context here. A lot of people won't, so I think the presentation was just kind of weird. In case you didn't know, they made the difficulty harder for streamers so they would have a harder time, and they died. But the thing is, everybody who's ever played on a different PC setup, right? Not your mouse, not your keyboard, not your keybinds, knows that's already a stress factor. I'm not like, oh, Ziz and Maffle just died all the time. It's like, of course they are, right? Like, didn't even get to the boss. Melee looked extremely frustrating, and that was probably because of the extra damage. So we can't really glean anything from it, but if this is all you give to us, we just have to also take it kind of at face value. Subtract them at the honor of presenting the PoE mobile stage, but like there was a problem with Apple TV. He didn't have any problems while playing it, but the presentation looked completely laggy. So yeah, I'm just concerned that the PoE that I love, the PoE 1, is going to go away over time. And sure, a really good take is maybe they're going to have both games, and eventually they're going to kind of feel the temperature of where they want to go over time, what people like more, what they like more. And I think that's a very level-headed take, but for me, it's not as much about that. I don't care about what the majority wants. I just kind of want to have the PoE 1 feel still. I just like being fast. When I played Diablo 4, one of the biggest problems for me was once I get to level 40 and I get like movement speed on my Emmy and my boots, I don't really feel much progression towards level 100. Yes, my numbers go up, but I don't get additional projectiles. I don't get extra AoE. I don't get like anything you could see or feel on the screen. The difference of a level 30-40 character in PoE and a decked out character with like 500 divines put into it is like mind-boggling. And maybe I just got so accustomed to that feeling, to that high, that it will be harder for me to enjoy PoE 2. I hope that's not the case. There's also probably a shared endgame here because they did show the Atlas passive tree in the PoE 2 trailer, which might just be like a leftover or like maybe just a placeholder even. They're gonna have a new endgame or something. There's also the passive tree, so are the games gonna share those? How do you even balance that? There's so many questions. I'm also hyped about the game though, because slowing down the game doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I absolutely love Grim Dawn. In Grim Dawn, being slow kind of makes sense and kind of still feels fine. Also, slowing down doesn't mean to dumb down the game, right? So if somebody could tell me that I could play something that's a little bit more towards D4, but it doesn't lack complexity, I'd be in. Also, as a content creator, having a second game that I don't have to completely learn from new, I can project some knowledge that I learned over the last 10 or so years onto a new game. I'm not completely blind. I can talk about stuff from the get-go. Is kind of amazing as well and very unique. But I just really wanted to get my thoughts out there because I got a lot of ads and I don't want to just answer with I'm kind of shocked or something, because that comes maybe over the wrong way. Either way, if I look at the end of the tunnel and I see somebody standing over there, it's the whole dev team of GGG. I think there are, if anybody can pull this off, this weird, like, we're going to keep PoE 1, PoE 2. They have a lot of shared things in between. I think GGG can do it. Path of Exile is such a convoluted game. It has so many variables to balance that I don't even know where to start, but I hope they pull through. Now, once again, do remember that this is my first initial reactions, and I'm sure this is going to change over the next week. I'm sure it's going to change over them clarifying stuff before the next league. I'm sure they're also going to talk more about PoE 2. I'm a stupid YouTuber who wants to put out their stuff as soon as possible. It is what it is. Take it or leave it. But with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.